We are officially live with Learning Live right now. I am so excited to introduce with Mary Alice Curran a fantastic week of learning with our amazing authors that have joined in to share. We're going to be sharing out lots of great things that are going to be happening through the authors all week. So make sure to join in and join the chat as that's going. And I'm going to let Mary Alice, if you want to just kind of share the authors, and then we'll let them go at it.
Well, welcome to everybody that's joining us online. Last Friday, I had the opportunity to go live with Jack and Jerry, and it was fabulous. And they really wanted to make sure that they were able to be in front of a larger audience for remote learning for kids that are at school and teachers and parents. And Roland was so taken by it that the three of them have decided, they worked all weekend to go live. And I'm going to let the three of them, today's session is live session is really meant to meet the author. So I know that Jamie and I are going to mute ourselves and turn our screens off, and we're going to let our authors take it from here.
One last thing, if they want to participate and ask any question from your author, you can do that right now on YouTube. So as you're watching, there's a chat button that you can join in and ask the questions, and we will certainly relay that as it gets going. All right, let's get you guys started.
Okay. How's that?
It's good. Who wants to start?
Can you see me, Roland?
Yeah.
How long to start? Well, Roland Smith is in Portland, Oregon. Jerry Pallotta is in Boston. Jack Gantos is in Boston. Thank you, everybody, for watching. The three of us have known each other for years and years and years. We're visiting thousands of schools, literally thousands of schools. I was thinking last night, maybe the three of us have been to 10,000 schools. So thank you, all you teachers out there, for having us. And we thought because the kids weren't in school, we'd try to get on ourselves and have get access to everyone. So there you go. If I was to ask a question, I would say, okay, Roland, I started writing books when I was 32 years old. When did you start?
Well, I was 5. Took me a long time to learn how to write. I wasn't quite as smart as you, so it took me from 5 until I was 35 to figure it all out. But yeah, I've been writing for a long time. And should we talk a little bit about who we are and books we've written? Should we do that? Jack, me,
Yeah.
Jerry?
I think you should let it go, Roland.
Okay. Well, I'm Roland Smith. I'm sitting in Oregon, as Jerry mentioned, in my office where I work on a lot of my books. And later this week, we'll talk a little bit about the writing process, but just to kind of remind you of some of the books I've written. I wrote a novel called Peak and Elephant Run, and Cryptid Hunters, and I'm not going to go through all of them. The Captain's Dog, and IQ, and Storm Runners, and a pile of other books. And this is kind of an interesting time for everybody. I mean, we're all kind of stuck at home. But for me anyway, and I'm sure it's the same for Jerry and for Jack as well, it's not that unusual for us to be stuck in an office someplace working on a book. This is kind of what we do every single day. But now a lot of people around the world are stuck. And when I'm not working on my books, I'm reading books. And I think that's really a good thing for the current environment we're in. The best way to stay home is to leave home by reading a book. A book a day keeps the virus away. So you should be reading those books, and that'll kind of get your mind on something else besides this other pandemic that's going on, which will go away eventually, but it's going to take a little while for it to go away. And so this week, we're going to just spend time talking about what we do and talking among each other and answering your questions. And it's really great that we have this kind of technology. And Jamie and Mary Alice are making this all work, which is really helpful because they're a lot smarter than I am anyway, that's for sure, because I have no idea how to do this, but I can sit in front of a camera and talk to you guys.
Well, it took me about 30 minutes to turn on my computer. You want me to go next for a while?
Yeah.
My name's Jerry Pallotta. I started out writing alphabet books. I had four little kids. I was reading to my kids, and then I thought, hey, I'll try to write a book. So that's the very first book I wrote, Ocean Alphabet Book. And then you know what happened? I just kept going. I wrote one of birds. I wrote one of bugs, Icky Bug Alphabet. And that's how I got started. I started writing nonfiction alphabet books. Later on, I wrote some math books, and lately I've been writing Who Would Win books. Here's my newest alphabet book. I wrote a book called Not a Butterfly Alphabet. So maybe you guys can figure out what that's about. Not a Butterfly Alphabet. So after I started writing books, I started getting invited to schools. I started visiting schools, and I've been visiting schools for almost 30 years. Someone said to me, what's it like being stuck at home during this quarantine? And I said, well, I've been to a lot of schools, been to a lot of hotels. So it's sort of the same. Stay at home, work on your books, write your books, read books. So there you go, Jack.
Okay. Jerry, thank you. I know that you are the hardest working man in show business when it comes to going to schools. Kids love you, Roland. You're so well organized. So you just know how to be masterful when it comes to research and putting together your books. And I think anybody who would read both of your books would be absolutely head first into them. I don't think they'd be thinking about their surroundings right now. I think they'd be thinking about what's taking place in the gutter of that book, just diving right into the soup of it. As for me, I know I look a little dim here. I keep trying to regulate the light, but I'll get it straight. So my name is Jack Gantos. I write books. I started writing books, started publishing books really when I was in college. I did the first Rotten Ralph book as an undergraduate, and that seemed to have gone down pretty good. I was in college for creative writing because I was always interested in literature and writing as a kid. And so I did the Ralph books, then I did a bunch of other picture books, and then I just started to bear down. And so I thought, what do I have to write about? And so I thought, well, write about what you know about. And I thought, well, what I know about is mostly myself because, as my wife always says about me, it's all you all the time anyway. So I took out my old kid journals, all my old kid diaries, and I reread them, made lists of stories, and then I wrote 5 volumes of autobiographical stories, the Jack Henry books. And then I thought, well, that's enough of that nonsense. And then I wrote the Joey Pigza books. And then I wrote books for young adults, leading up to a book called Whole of My Life, which is an autobiographical book about some of my more difficult moments as a teenager. We don't have to get into that right now, but imagine bars. And so that's it. I live in Boston. I go to schools. I've always gone to about 40, 50 schools a year, worked with students, worked with teachers, keynoted conferences. And so I like having both sides of this life. I like isolation and working. And then I like going out like Jerry and Roland and meeting the people that we write the books for, influencing and teaching people about literature and about how books can transform your life. That's it. Thank you.
All right. You want to go now, Ro?
Go again? You want me to repeat that? No, we should ask each other some questions. I mean, one thing that's kind of interesting with you, Jerry, is that you write the Who Would Win books, which are wonderful. And I have to say this, the Who Would Win books are kind of my grandkids' favorite books. And it's sort of irritating to me because I happen to write books, but Jerry writes these really wonderful books. And he writes his books a lot faster than I am able to get my books out. I usually write like one book a year because they're a little bit thicker and stuff. But what kind of research and stuff do you do, Jerry, when you're working on like a Who Would Win book?
Well, the latest book, Falcon versus Hawk, when I never really thought of it until I went to Ireland last year. My college buddies said, hey, let's all go to Ireland. So we went to Ireland, 6 guys. And one of the days they said, come on, we're going falconing. So there we went over to this castle, whatever. And some guy had signed us up to go falconing. So we saw the hawk, we saw the falcons, we saw the barn owls. And the guy who taught us all about the hawks gave an hour-long lecture. And after the lecture, I thought, wow, that guy just handed me a book. So then when I got home, I did more research. But I really thought when I was there that it was just coming right to me, the whole thing. Like, this one has this kind of wings, this one goes that fast. And I started to lay the book out. I will share a secret with you all. When my shirts get done, see my shirt right here? When my shirts get done at the cleaners, they have these cardboards in them. I started laying out my books on the cardboards for my shirts. See that? So this one about falcons, and I would read everything I could about hawks. And then if I got in trouble, I might call one of those guys up that teaches falconing. So when I was doing that book, I did it like that. So recently, though, I've been writing books for 30 years. So I had all this knowledge of ocean creatures because I wrote about 20 ocean books. So when I sat down, like to say I was going to write Who Would Win, Ultimate Ocean Rumble, when I started working on that, I had all this knowledge in my head about ocean creatures. So I thought I started working on that one. You can see this, and you'll see that I use the same cardboard to lay out the fight scene in my, I think it's my Shark Rumble book, which it didn't come out yet. If you kids want to know what I laid the fight scene out like that, I was trying to figure out who would win and who would go and who would end up and who's in the first round, who's in the second round. So you can see I'm just like you kids. I write by hand, you know. I do write a lot of stuff on my iPhone and on the computer, but I write by hand, and I call myself a scrap writer. I know this. Roland is a very disciplined writer. Jack is a very disciplined writer. I'm sort of all over the place, scraps, but I have my guide, and I work on that, and that's how I would write one of the books. So how would I research it? Go to museums, go to zoos, talk to scientists, read books. There you go.
Jack, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You know, you've written really, I love your novels. I've read them for years. And how difficult was for you to write an autobiography, whole in my life? How hard was that to do an autobiography like that? I mean, it's different than your other books, and I've thought about doing one myself, but I always kind of hit a wall when I start writing specifically about myself. How hard was that for you?
So, thank you for the question. I don't know. It was, hard is part of it, but fear was another part of it. Because that book is about my teenage years as a drug smuggler, and then getting caught, and then going to prison, and then getting out, and then going to college and writing books for children. So the getting out part, so I'm writing Rotten Ralph, I'm writing picture books, all right? I think this is not the time to write a book about going to prison. I'm trying to get a reputation here. What school wants to bring in, let's get a picture book author. Which one should we get? Oh, let's go get the drug smuggling one. So I'm like, no, I can't write about that. So I sort of had a pen name, and I wrote that novel, but I never thought it was very good. I overly fictionalized it. I gussied it up. I over dramatized it. And quite frankly, I wasn't very good at organizing a book. So then I did the Ralph books, picture books. I did the Jack Henry books, and then I did the Joey books. And once I did the Joey books, then I got a National Book Award nomination, and I got a Newbery honor. And I thought, well, maybe now I'm protected by these sort of medals in the field. And so maybe I should go back to that material. So then, instead of trying to overly dress up the novel, I just kept it very simple, straightforward prose, nouns and verbs, and told the story, and brought in a lot of literature, a lot of what influenced me as a writer and as a reader, and let that story just unfold and unroll by itself. And I think the honesty was the best policy in that. And then I just let it go. And I thought either my career will just now collapse, or something else will happen. And in fact, the field was very generous, and more generous than I anticipated. And so that book won a Cybert Award and a Prince honor, and then it elevated my career as well. So that I was.
That's a beautiful book. Every high school kid in America should read that book.
No, thank you.
I've given it to all my friends, and I say, you got to read this book. And I tell people who tell me they want to write, they say to me, I want to become a writer. I want to become a writer. I tell them, you got to read Hole in My Life by Jack Gantos. Then tell me if you want to be a writer.
Yeah. Well, let me hold up a copy of it just so people. This is the hardback copy. There's a softback copy out, but this is it. And on the back, the nice little bonus portion on the back, that's the boat that I was smuggling with. So I sailed that boat, that 65-foot yacht, gaff rig ketch, across the Atlantic Ocean. And that's in New York City on the Hudson. And that is on the front page of the New York Times. Goodness. So see, I mean, you could write books about anything. You could write them about your darkest days and your greatest days. I mean, falconing. Could you imagine falconing? That must have been the most thrilling thing, to have that bird come down and just.
The bird was 100 yards away, and then he'd put a piece of meat the size of an M&M on my hand, and the bird could see it from 100 yards and come down and get it.
Yeah, man, that's more fearful.
There were 6 of us, so he wouldn't let the bird know which one he put it on, but the bird could see it.
Wow,
It's great.
I just want to say, Roland, one of the things that I like about your books too is that and Jerry, the same thing, is that there's always a foundation of research that goes into these books, which then you get to build off of. And I know as a writer, part of the joy in doing this job is the reading portion of it.
Oh yeah.
Could you speak to that?
Yeah, that's actually my favorite part, because I only write about things I want to write about. So I'm interested. It's kind of like getting paid for going to school in a way. So if I don't know something, then I get to study what I want, and then somebody pays me to write the book, and so I get to learn things, and actually in an odd kind of a way, get paid to learn things that I want to learn. It'd be great if everybody out there, you kids that are watching, got paid to go to school. Wouldn't that be awesome? And in a way, that's kind of what I get to do. It probably takes me twice as long to do the research for a book as it does to write the book, even though I'm writing pretty thick books. So I spend a lot of time reading and traveling and talking to people. And that's kind of where the stories sort of come from. Before I was an author, I was a research biologist. I was actually a wolf biologist for many, many years. And so I know all about research when it comes to animals, and that's kind of transferred over to writing books as well. I mean, I know how to kind of zoom in on a subject, do the research, and the stories kind of evolve out of the things I learn that I'm writing about. So yeah, that is my favorite part. You know, I also like doing the rough draft because I don't really care what's in it. I mean, the revision, which is really the meat of writing a decent story. But the revision is, I mean, the first draft, the rough draft, is a lot of fun because I kind of have the story in my head and I just let it pour out. I don't really care what's in there because I'm going to correct everything anyway. And I like that part too. So those are reading doing the research and then writing the rough draft are my two favorite parts. And the revision, which takes probably the longest of the three processes, is not my favorite part, but it's everything. You know, that's the whole thing. That's what makes a really good book, is writing it over. But we'll talk about later this week. I think we're going to talk about specifically about how we write books. I can't remember what day it is, but one of these days this week.
Yeah. Yeah, the favorite part. So I write all my books in the library. I don't write much at home. I usually get up, I go to the gym, and then I go to the library for 8 hours. So I walk across Boston, I go to the Boston Athenaeum, I go up to the 5th floor, and then I have my seat. I love this library. There's no cell phone use. There's no talking. It's a totally silent floor. It's the writer's floor. You're there to do business. And I love that because it makes me concentrate. It makes me stay focused, because otherwise, if I stayed home, I'd be like Joey Pigza around the house. I'd just be like walking around looking for something to do, something to get into. And all my energy would backfire and kind of go into avoiding writing rather than, being marshaled to really nose down on a piece of paper. So the library for me is just like, it's a joyful experience going to the library. I get to read books, and it focuses me.
So your library is a private library. Is it open now still?
No, it's closed right now. We had a school group come through, and one of the kids, it's like elementary, one of the kids was tested positive for the virus. So they closed it, and they're doing a month-long deep clean.
So you're working at home then now?
Yeah, that's what I think I'm doing. Honest to God, I'm just like, I should have a ball and chain and a desk. That's what I should have.
Isn't that interesting? Because I'm like totally different. I write it in the car, at a stop sign. I'll write at Starbucks. I'll write on the plane. I'll write in the hotel room. I'll write at home. I'll write in my head. I'll write in a notebook. I'll write on the iPhone. Just anything really interesting that I would find from my books, I would just write it down.
Wait, don't you think, Roland, you must do this too. Don't you have like a packet of Post-it notes like Jerry in your pocket?
Oh yeah.
All day long?
Yeah, I carry a notebook all the time. And I've written books a lot of different ways. If I'm traveling, I write by hand. If I'm in my office, I do rough drafts on a manual typewriter and transcribe them into a computer and revise them in the computer. I wrote Peak, that novel about climbing Mount Everest. I wrote a good portion of it going out for long walks and dictating the book. So I've tried a lot of different things. There's a lot of different ways to write. You know what I mean? The simplest thing is to just get a notebook and a pencil, or you use fountain pens, I know, but you just write your story, you know what I mean? And just sort of try to focus on it. The big thing, of course, is momentum, keeping it going. Once you start the draft, you keep going until the draft is basically done. Momentum's everything. You don't want to lose that. And one of the best ways to keep your momentum going is to make sure that everything you have is portable, and you're flexible about how you actually work. You know what I mean? There's lots of different approaches to getting that down on paper. So you need to keep it going, whatever's in front of you. Like, you don't get to go to the library now, you got to write at home. I'm not traveling, so I get to write on my big old manual typewriter, which is a lot of fun for me. And, Jerry, you just write wherever you happen to be. I've been with you 1,000 times, different places, and you're always pulling out pieces of paper, and it makes me worried. I think you're going to finish a book while we're out together eating lobster.
You're funny.
Oh,
I
Jerry,
bet I thought of something really good.
what?
I bet I thought of something I could write in one of my books from watching you eat a lobster.
Yeah, I got to mention this because someone sent a question. It's Steve Swinberg, who's a good friend of all of ours, and he writes nonfiction books, and he wanted to know why you and I are bald. And I would like to address that question because, a lot of people don't really know that. So yeah, that's good. I'm kind of bald too. The thing is, Steve, if you're listening, is that think about evolution. Are we getting more hairy or are we getting less hairy? You know, we're getting more hairy. And as Jerry's and my brain expands, it pushes all the hair follicles out because our brains are basically getting bigger every single day. And so really the less hair you have, the smarter you are. That's science.
I think it's settled science.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Low IQ.
Yeah, look at all that hair. I mean, yeah. I know, it's nice.
Yeah, I know, but it's weighing me down.
Yeah,
It's slowing me down.
it's true. Yeah. Jerry and I don't have to worry about that. It's really easy to dry off.
I know, streamlined,
Man,
air cooled.
yeah.
You guys are doing it. But do you remember the days when you would have a voice activated, what was called a pearl quarter?
Oh, yeah.
And you could keep it in your top pocket like this. So you'd be driving, like I'd be driving to a job on the other side of the state. You know, you can be in the car for 4 or 5 hours. And all you're doing the whole time is talking to yourself, talking out sentences, talking out ideas. I love those pearl quarter days.
I do too. And I have several digital recorders. And the cool thing about them now is that it used to be kind of embarrassing when you were talking to yourself. And now you can just talk into a cell phone and everybody thinks you actually have friends. And you're actually talking to friends, but actually you're really dictating a book to yourself. You know what I mean? So it's not quite as odd as it used to.
But yeah, Jerry, and Jerry, you must do that all the time. Like I've never seen the inside of your car, but now I'm visualizing the inside of your car, and it just looks like snowflakes of paper scraps that are just mounded up from you whipping off these lightning fast ideas, scratching them down on paper, tossing them off, you know, opening the windows. I mean, there's probably, if kids ran behind your car, they could probably put together a book of all the stuff that came out of your car, blew through the window.
You guys are funny. You guys should write books.
Hey, I have another question because you guys probably don't know how to get the question. So here's a question for you guys. It's from Trevor Cochran. He says, do your stories come to you fluidly and in order, or do you compile many notes and then order them how they make sense? And for me, I'll just answer it first. You guys should answer it after me. I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to write before I write, but it all changes while I'm writing the rough draft. So I'm not sure exactly it's a fluid process. I mean, as far as, you know, the book ends up exactly like how the book is when it's finished. You know what I mean? I mean, I mess around with things quite a bit. I change things. I change plot lines. I rearrange things. And then even after you send it to the publisher, things get rearranged. You know, your editor at the publisher has a lot of different ideas and they have actually really good ideas. You know, and so 99% of the time they say, hey, you know what, this doesn't make sense. And if somebody says something doesn't make sense, then it probably doesn't make sense. And I will look at it again and say, oh, you know what, they might be right about that. So I don't know how fluid they are. I think there's days when you might write a couple fluid pages that work okay. But overall, for me, I wouldn't consider them fluid. I'd consider them more like rapids. I mean, it kind of goes up and down and stuff like that until you decide what you're going to do. What do you think, Jack? Is there fluidity?
Yeah, I like fluidity. I mean, you know, it makes me happy during, especially at the end of the day when I look back over my shoulder and I go, did you get anything done?
Yeah.
You know, because it picks up your evening, you know, if you feel like, yeah, I accomplished something today. And because we do have goals and you have to have set goals. Otherwise, you know, you would just get drifty all day long. So what, you know, I try and, you know, like the Virginia Woolf method was always 2,000 words or 4 hours, whatever came first. And if she didn't pick up the pen, she would just sit there for 4 hours just to keep the discipline, you know, because you should not say to yourself, oh, I guess this is an unproductive day. I'll get up and take a walk or take a stroll or, you know, go bake some banana bread. But no, you have to dedicate yourself to it. As for me, the focal point, the things I depend on in the beginning would be characters and theme, and everything else can pretty much change. Even the characters can change, and the theme can be different. So I would say 50 to 100 drafts.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
right there. Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. Jerry, how about you with fluidity?
Well, I would say this, like, say I was doing the Falcon book and I decide to have pages about what they eat. And then I realized I wrote that before I wrote what their beaks were like. So then I thought, well, I got to put the beaks before the food. You know what I mean? It might sound really logical to you. It might sound like that was a really simple problem, but I might have thought of that problem for 2 weeks. And then, like, say I laid the book out and I'm mentioning the talons, but then I realized later in the book, the talons had to be moved up or down because whatever I was saying in the book didn't make sense to have the talons earlier in the book. You follow me?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I might think of the whole book, but then I might spend weeks and weeks trying to figure out the order, like try to think like a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old. Try to think like when they were reading the book, what would be logical for them. I don't know if that's what fluid means. I'll have to look fluid
Well,
up.
kind of. I mean, you know, I mean, there's an order that things should go in logically, and I think that's part of fluidity too, to some degree.
Oh, I do too. I think Jerry's absolutely, spot on there. I mean,
I'll
when
ask you
get a
guys.
pile of information, what comes first? I'm sorry?
Yeah. I'll ask you guys a question. Did you ever dream any of your books? Because I can tell you that I dreamt one of my books.
Wow.
And then I woke up and I wrote it out. And it was really strange because in the dream, I was turning the pages of the book all done. And then I woke up and then I started to piece it together. It did. I didn't do it in one day. It took months and months, but
You know, that's never happened to me, Jerry. Unfortunately, it'd be kind of fun to read a book. It'd be a long night though, because we write much thicker books than you. So it'd be, we'd have to sleep for like 3 or 4 weeks. I will tell you one thing about.
Well, maybe you hibernate. Maybe that's how you write your books. You're a hibernate.
I'll tell you one thing that does happen to me, which is kind of interesting, is that when I'm doing research for a book, I just keep doing the research and weeks and weeks and weeks of research. And the way I know that I need to start doing the first draft, a rough draft, is when I'm laying there and getting ready to go to sleep and the story starts playing in my head like it's a film. It's almost like I saw a film and you're thinking about that film as you're going to sleep and the scenes are kind of running off in your head. And that's kind of a magic point for me. At that point I go, okay, I got it. Because it kind of plays like a movie in my head to some degree. I'm not asleep, by the way, but I'm sort of drifting off, and I know that that's a moment when I probably should start working on the rough draft. I start imagining the scenes and actually see them almost filmatically in my head. How about you, Jack?
That was really well put. I think that I have that same sort of experience when early in the book, when you're trying to load up the book into your mind. And it's loading up in pieces. And then eventually those pieces begin like lily pads to find each other. Mm-hmm. And then it begins to make a mosaic. And then that spark hits it, right? And then we have life. And then it moves filmically.
Yeah.
And I love that moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you know you have a tiger by the tail.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And that should give you a jolt.
Yeah.
And that's when you actually say to yourself, don't go to sleep, you lazy sot. Get up and write that down. Because in the morning, what happens in the morning? Poof.
It's true. There's sometimes you have something, you just have to write it. You have to work on it.
Yeah.
Or you'll lose it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. I keep a pen and notebook open right on the side of my bed. And so many times I wake up and just write something down.
That's nice. I have a pen and notebook too, but it's brand new. It's been there for 20 years. I've never written in that thing. Usually one of my great skills is sleeping. So I'm a good sleeper. Once I go to sleep, I actually go to sleep. So I don't usually wake up at night and do anything. I just sleep.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
because then during the day,
Yeah, I'm
you can
okay.
get the job
I'm pretty
done.
alert. I'm pretty alert during the day.
Because if you don't sleep, it's pretty rough.
I see here there's another question, but
Yeah.
because of my screen, I can't see the question. So I don't know if you
I
guys.
can tell you what it is. You ready?
Yeah.
It says, Jerry, how many Who Would Win books do you see in the future? Susan Hutchins wrote that, who we know. And she also said, I once dreamed I was in one of Roland's books. But anyway, so how many Who Would Win books do you see in the future, Jerry?
Geez, I don't know. I guess there's 24 that are done. 23 printed, 24 that are done. And I have a contract for 4 more. So after that, I guess I'd probably, if the series was still hot, I'd keep doing them, I guess. Or if there were animals I really loved, like I've always wanted to write a book about a coyote, really learn about coyotes. So I think that's a great word. Kids love the word coyote. So I would say I'd do a book like that. I'm working on a book right now with a walrus in it.
I could help you with both those things, Jerry.
I know. So I keep getting letters from kids that say, Jerry, why don't you write a wolf book? Jerry, why don't you write a wolf book?
Yeah.
You know? So you're the first person I'm going to call if I do a wolf book.
Okay, good.
You know, Jerry, I got this idea for you, which I actually think would double your production. So the next 24, 28 books that you do would be called Who Would Lose? So they'd be the same book, only written from another point of view.
That's too brilliant for me.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because, in all these years, one kid did come up to me and say, why don't you write Who Would Lose?
That was me years ago.
It's the future Jack Gantos.
Thinking backward already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just get a different publisher.
Yeah.
Snap them off. Clever.
Yeah. It'd be funny.
Do that. It is.
Well, should we wrap this up and show up again tomorrow? What do you guys think?
Yeah, that sounds good. You guys, well, first off, you all are hilarious. We're back there. I know you can't hear us, but everybody is cracking up and just loving this. It's so fun to hear who you are as an author, as a person. Some of those stories I've never heard before. That was really cool. Mary Alice was monitoring the chat as well and seeing all the people coming in and sharing. I know we had some people out of the US, right, Mary Alice?
Yep, we had Canada, we had Scotland, and then around the United States, but some great questions on YouTube that I then put into the chat, and like, Roland, you get the A+ for checking the chat box.
Yeah, boys.
Hey, there it is.
I figured that out.
These guys
So
aren't competitive at all.
It's not fair. My screen just said, you have a question. That's all.
Yeah. Well, there's a thing down at the bottom. It's kind of interesting. It says chat or something, Zoom group chat. It took me about 30 minutes to figure that out, but I did click the button eventually.
So do you have a panel when you press your chat button? Do you have a whole panel on the right-hand side? How do you collapse that panel?
It's at the bottom on Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for all of you that participated in the YouTube chat here, Mary Alice was monitoring that and sharing that here in Zoom with us. And all week we'll be doing different topics, different conversations that the authors are going to share with you. Definitely gave us some great inspiration for writing, as well as hearing the backstories behind some of this. And every day, it being themed, it will be an opportunity for you to come in, bring your students in, have them join the chat, ask questions, and they're ready to hear it. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen. Mary Alice and we apologize. There was a little bit of a glitch on the link, but everybody made it in just fine. And I think we're ready to go for tomorrow. Mary Alice, did you want to say anything?
Oh yeah, we're all set for tomorrow. And And, to answer that question, there was a question in YouTube that it'll be a new link. So just stay tuned for an updated link for tomorrow. But tomorrow, the three authors are going to be talking about writing inspiration. So join the three authors tomorrow. Same sort of format. I'll get those questions into the chat. And I want to say, that I'm really bravo to our three authors for going live today, and looking forward to continuing to learn with you tomorrow.
Well, thanks for making this happen. That's great. And remember, kids, a book a day keeps the virus away. Read the books, read books, not just our books, but anybody's books. It'll keep you in the house, but it'll keep your mind outside of being isolated like that.
Good idea. Thank you, guys.
All you kids, keep reading. What do I tell people? Read a zillion books.
There you go. That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right, terrific. See you tomorrow.
Hey, guys.
See you later.
See you tomorrow.